Welcome to the Sri Lankan Understanding, a platform on which we explore the past, present and future of Sri Lanka, an island in the Indian Ocean, and we look at the potential in a variety of sectors going forward. Our topic for conversation today is public relations in Sri Lanka. We've invited the director of Uber Minds, who has both local and international experience in this particular field, Kishani Gunasekara. Thank you, Kishani, for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me, George.
Kishani, what exactly is this field called public relations and how has it evolved?
Okay, so that's an absolutely great question, because when I introduce myself to people, usually it's like I work in public relations, and the question is like, what? Okay, and I have to say, oh yeah, it's something to do with advertising, and they're like, oh, you work in advertising. So it is something that not too many people are familiar with. So then I'm like, okay, so we need to really educate people what public relations is. Public relations is about engaging people, building relationships, okay, and between brands and the public.
When we talk about public relations, for example, we've come across situations where, as you said, there's a common line with advertising.
Yes.
But there's a distinct difference there.
There is. Okay,
advertising would be commercials.
So when you talk about public relations, it has, so advertising is known as above the line, okay, and whereas public relations is known as below the line, okay. So there's paid and unpaid media. Public relations is what is unpaid media. So it is basically relationship between the journalist or an influencer and your agency or your PR person, okay, which needs to be fostered over time, okay, whereas advertising is something that you would pay for and buy the space. So it's quite different.
Absolutely.
Okay,
it's a very distinct set of sectors as well.
It's very distinct, and public relations has evolved over time. Okay, social media has come into play in public relations. Okay, and when you look at the fact that in 2020 the whole world went into shutdown. Okay. Nobody was getting their newspapers. Only maybe 10% of the country was getting their newspapers. So Sri Lanka had to also come up a pace in what was getting their information. Okay, so therefore we had to evolve and think of ways to make sure that we communicate our brands' values or what they want to connect to the message to their clients in a more innovative manner. I can take an example of what has happened in the world. Okay, during the lockdown, as I said, everybody was affected. A brand like IKEA had a thing with a hashtag saying "stay home." Okay, where they actually brought into play where people were encouraged to stay at home. Okay, and then to work from home and make their environment more aesthetically pleasing for themselves,
and you buy their
comforting.
Products,
okay,
and you
so
do
then
up your home.
Exactly. Okay, so it's just not, hey, an advertisement, we have this product, come and get it. It's saying, hey, we like to be part of your life. Okay, so come be with us. So what I would say PR does is that they actually bring the essence of the product out.
So obviously it's an effective PR strategy that has to be formulated to achieve something like that.
Yeah.
The example you gave, using a challenging situation but using it to your advantage. And that's exactly what that company has done.
Yeah.
But how do we go about evolving this comprehensive strategic PR policy? Because it's something that everybody can't do, right? I mean, that's one example that you mentioned.
Yeah.
But there are so many organizations out there who have so many products that they want to sell, or they want to, as you said, influence you to buy their products. How do we come to formulating that effective PR strategy?
Well, okay, so what I can say is that one size does not fit all, as with everything and anything. So even though one size does not fit all, PR is something that is essential, okay, and in a way affordable for all as well, because you don't have to buy a whole advertising page or a commercial time or anything like that, because in traditional advertising, those are very expensive, okay, whereas in PR, what we do is we tailor make a a
Entire
strategy,
package.
okay, as per the client's need. So what could be like a traditional press release will work for a client, okay, and something that is a traditional press release, even though we do say it's a bit archaic in the PR industry now, because you have things like social media, okay, you speak to influencers, okay, there are so many ways of approaching
So you need
people.
different products for the different sectors.
You need to have like a whole gamut of things. If you don't have a gamut of things and you just issue one press release, the impact is going to be so little. Yes, it is essential, as I said, to have that traditional press release, because the more content we create for a client, okay, the more visibility they have on digital media. And something that is very relevant in today's context is search engine optimization. So whenever we put content out there, we ensure that the keyword searches are all available in a press release, that when a press release goes out, it may go into, say, a Daily Mirror or a Daily FT. Okay, it'll go into your publication and it will go onto your online publication as well. That will enhance the client's search. Okay, so what is the first thing you do when you need to find out something about a product or a person or whatever? What is the first thing you do?
Google.
Exactly. So when you put the Google out, when you put something into Google, the first thing, just say you're talking about shoes, okay? The first thing that comes up, okay, would be your client if you put the correct keywords in. So that is what PR does. We create content that makes a client's product reach up in a social media or a digital platform.
So this is where PR and people who are in public relations are really this bridge between their clients and their customers. And you're
Correct.
trying to bring them that much closer and help them understand their clientele.
Yes.
Which can be very varied, and there are
Yes.
so many mediums through which they can be reached out to.
Of course.
When we come back after the break, I want to talk about the situation in Sri Lanka and also how we go out into the region. When we come back on the next segment of the Sri Lankan Understanding, right here on hi.lk. Welcome back to the Sri Lankan Understanding. We're in conversation with Kishani Gunasekara and we're talking about public relations in Sri Lanka. Kishani, you gave us the difference between public relations and advertising and how it has gradually evolved over a considerable period of time, and the important bridge or the role that it plays between customers and their clients or their customers. Now, when we look at Sri Lanka, where are we? How has this field developed in this country?
Well, okay, Sri Lanka, when we compare it to our immediate neighbor, is far behind. Okay, India is leaps and bounds ahead of us. Okay, but when we compare ourselves to other countries within the SAARC region, we're placed well. Okay, when you compare us to Bangladesh, Afghanistan, Bhutan, Nepal, I'd say we have to thank our forefathers in advertising who actually thought public relations was important and did find the correct people to lead different agencies and get affiliations to international agencies locally. Okay, so therefore people like me who started as a young professional over 15 years ago in the public relations industry got the correct base. Okay, so as a country, we have done well in the starting point of PR, but as a country, we have not evolved since the inception. Personal experience would be, I had the opportunity of working overseas in the public relations field, where I was able to, work with international brands, see how their PR works. It was also at a wonderful time because it was the time that social media and digital media came into play in the whole advertising, public relations sphere. Okay, there was never at that time a social media unit or a digital media unit. It was all encapsulated in the same thing. So when I got that exposure to see, oh yeah, okay, there are so many different ways that you can actually communicate to your audience instead of just the traditional press release, okay, by creating various touch points to your consumer. It was very interesting. Okay, but when I came back here, it was like we had not progressed from when I had left. I'm speaking specifically for the PR industry, okay, because we still felt that it was more important to just issue a press release, get maximum coverage in the newspaper. It didn't matter the circulation of the newspaper, because that again is something that we don't do in Sri Lanka. We don't audit publications. Okay, so we believe what a publication says. Say a publication prints 50,000 copies. We're a 22 million nation. Okay, what is 50,000? So we have to take all of that into context when we are actually getting coverage out there. Mm-hmm. Okay, so as much as it is important to do a press release, as I mentioned, the more important part for me in the current context as a PR professional is to make sure that I'm on a more global reach than a local reach.
So yes, that is where you talked about how you need to, for example, auditing, circulation, the availability. That is knowledge. You have
Yes.
you're looking for knowledge. You're doing research into those areas,
Yeah.
which is something that companies are probably not doing, and they are relying on PR organizations to provide that feedback for them. Now, when you look at South Asia, you mentioned certain countries and you said how Sri Lanka is doing much better. Now, you've been outside of South Asia. When you look at what some of the innovative measures that they are taking, where do you see them going forward? Have they also started at the same time that we started? Have they had some kind of advantage in the race? How have they been able to really jump forward there?
So I'm not going to take India into play because they've always been streets ahead of most of the South Asian countries, okay, because they've got over 1 billion population and they need to keep that population informed, and so many vernacular publications and so on. But when you look at the other countries, they haven't grown at all. Yes, they do have public relations agencies. I mean, I'll take an example with a country I've worked quite recently with, Bangladesh. Okay, so a foreign client approached us and said they wanted to do PR in Sri Lanka as well as in Bangladesh, and we were the lead agency that needed to work with both organizations, both the countries. We contacted a sister agency in Bangladesh, okay, and it was not possible for us to get coverage which was not unpaid for. Okay, so it had to be paid for.
Because there was probably no network or understanding.
No, it's not that. Okay, now if you look at a country like Bangladesh, okay, you have to get paid print coverage. Okay, you look at a country like even Russia for that matter, okay, they would only do paid coverage. Okay, so in that way, I think we as a country are doing well, because we still rely on that relationship and the fact that we respect our media enough to say, hey, you know, I have something exclusive for you, okay, and it is not going to be given to anybody else, and they will respect you enough to say, this person is going to, you know, not duplicate this story to somebody else. So that's why I think we need to respect the media enough not to just blast mail everything.
Because you can't have the same paragraphs, the same wording coming in multiple papers and being read out on the news, or you don't want the same thing.
Well, the thing is, you do need it when it's an announcement, but when it's something specialized, it is up to your agency or your PR personnel to make sure that it's something unique for each publication.
You're adding quality at that point.
It is essential.
It is absolutely essential.
Yeah.
When we come back, I want to talk about where we're going forward, because we also got to realize there are certain challenges. Why aren't we where we should be, or why are we ahead of some of the others? When we come back on the next segment of the Sri Lankan Understanding, as we discuss public relations in Sri Lanka. Welcome back to Sri Lankan Understanding. We're in conversation with Kishani Gunasekara and we're talking about public relations in Sri Lanka. Kishani, obviously there are challenges and there have been quite a few. You said when you left the country at one point, we were at a certain place, and when you came back, we probably were at that same place. Why is that? What are the challenges that the industry is facing?
Well, one of the main challenges is that some clients don't understand what PR is. Okay, I mean, if you speak to most large corporates, it's like, oh, put a press release out. That's PR. We've been called for pictures, and they're like, oh, but you're the PR element of it, so you just need to issue a press release. That is not PR. Okay. It is so much more. It's internal communications, it is advocacy, it is, getting information, working with influencers. There's so much you can do. Okay, so we don't just stick to the basics. Okay, but one of the main challenges in the current context is the fact that clients are struggling in Sri Lanka. Our island has had a very devastating past 3 years. So budgets get slashed. And the first budget that gets slashed is the marketing budget and PR budget. Okay, so that is a huge challenge that I think most agencies in this country are facing currently. Most companies are facing, I would say. Okay, another thing that is a challenge in the industry is how do you monitor return on investment for a client? Okay, as I said, we don't have audited things. So when you work with clients that are not local, they're like, what is this? Okay, so we need to put in place better monitoring and ROI tools. Another big problem that we face in this country is that the youth are not wanting to get into the field. So something that is essential for someone who is looking at pursuing a career in public relations is they need to be able to write, okay, or have a passion to write. And with all this social media around, I think the interest in actually writing and documenting is reducing. As opposed to, where we had to keep diaries for things. Everything is online now. You don't really need to keep a diary for anything, And it's very funny because in the recent past, I was listening to a podcast, okay, and something that one of the senior PR people in, I believe, the US was saying is that something that a PR person always has with them is their notebook and a pen. Okay, because whenever you go for a meeting, whatever it is, you're always jotting down notes because you're always thinking, thinking of ways on how to communicate different aspects of what a client informs you about.
You might hear a word or phrase which will give you an idea. Exactly. It's inspiration. Okay, so that is what we try to do. And this is where, I guess, going forward, we need to be focusing a lot more on that.
Yeah, I mean, as a country, we need to, okay? Because even if you look at us as a country, are we putting out the correct message? Okay, is everybody having a unified message? Okay.
Because that's what I want to come to. I mean, we're talking about the corporate sector to a large extent.
Yes.
But we can take this national.
Of course.
In terms of how Sri Lanka relates to the world.
Yeah.
And how we have a message, how we have a narrative to share.
Yeah, so something I will say, George, is that we need to always think in a context of global. Let's not think of a context of Sri Lanka, okay? Because, I mean, even this interview, it goes online. So it's globally,
accessible.
Accessible. Yeah. So we should never put ourselves in that Sri Lanka box. We should get out of the Sri Lanka box, and whatever content we're putting, make sure it is acceptable to a wider audience. Okay, so even for a client, okay, any brand, we should not only be looking at the local market, because everybody can access anything. Yeah.
And there's a lot of scope.
Of course.
Going ahead, what tangible measures do you think should be taken to overcome some of those challenges, to look ahead, to learn from experiences out there? What more should we be doing? What advice would you like to give young people who want to get into this field? Where can we see a growth? Where can we see development, enhancement, adding that quality that we talked about?
I mean, what I always tell my team is always learn, okay? I mean, I'm a person that has learned a lot on the job, okay? I have learned about different products, different things, okay, or events or whatever it is. It is all been part of my work, okay, but it's also been part of my work to know what is happening in the country, what is happening in the region, what is happening around the world. So something that I would say is always be informed, okay? I mean, it is not something that is only relevant to somebody that would be in public relations. It is relevant for anybody, okay? It is, because at the end of the day, you know, that is what allows you to grow as an individual, okay? Not that I'm saying taking all the negative that's happening around you, no. Take in information, okay? Positive, whatever it is. Yeah.
And information that will help you grow.
Correct.
Information that will help you enhance what you're already doing.
Exactly.
And as you said, it's not only for people in the PR industry to know how to grow it, it's also for those that they're dealing with to understand what PR is all about.
Of course.
Like that's where we're coming back to a crux of the problem, and that is why we are featuring this particular topic on this episode as to what public relations is all about. As you said, it's not just a piece of paper, not just 4 or 5 paragraphs with some information saying, go publish this. That's not what it is.
It isn't.
And you're really defeating the purpose if you think that, as you said, one size is going to fit all. It's not.
No.
It's absolutely not. You're going to have to cater with how the media has grown, how society is growing. Everything's evolving. Industries have got to evolve. Our thinking has got to evolve.
Of course.
And I guess this is where, going forward, we're going to see a lot more potential in the corporate world, in the private sector, certainly in the state sector, but looking at this internationally. And as you said, not only thinking of what we are catering to in the domestic market, but also trying to reach at least to the region, at least beyond that, which is, I'm sure, something that you saw when you were outside of this country, how we are citizens of the world at the end of the day, and we're thinking globally when it comes to these topics. So thank you very much, Kishani, for joining us on the episode and sharing your experience and expertise. We've been discussing public relations in Sri Lanka, the scope of this particular field, and going forward, what is the potential that we have in terms of understanding what PR is all about and how it can be used to enhance what we are already doing in Sri Lanka and in our relations with the world at large. Thank you for joining us on the Sri Lankan Understanding. Join us again next time when we focus on another aspect of the island and the potential for the future.